And happy Wednesday to the world out there, and happy almost NFL season, everybody. Gentlemen, welcome to the Hawkscast podcast.
We're almost there.
We're almost there. It's so close.
Feel it.
Every morning I wake up and I check to see if there wasn't like an explosion of corona cases that would make them have to change anything, and there's never like a giant explosion, and so every day I get a slightly more optimistic.
I mean, crazy to think there are more people that have abstained from this NFL season than actually contracted coronavirus.
Yeah.
True, I had not thought of it in those terms, but that's interesting.
I mean, what's interesting is most of the people that have like opted out of this season, like half of them are fringe guys. Another portion of them are like people that will guarantee money because it doesn't matter what they do. It's better for them just to like they get their guaranteed money if they're on the roster, and opting out of the season guarantees them that, and they get a little bit extra. But yeah, like they wouldn't have made any money during the regular season anyway, so this is kind of a bonus for them. It's really, really weird.
Well, I mean that's a kind of a cynical way to look at it. I prefer to look at it as I think something like 9 out of the 11 were like the big guys, and they're more susceptible. If you're like overweight, that's one of the contributing factors of. As we now know, it's like coronavirus plus alpha equals, then you're in trouble.
Oh yeah, and I don't want to paint any of the people that opted out that they're somehow like gaming the system. That is not my intention. It's just they're put in a situation where they had an option to maximize their health, which I think is really rare in the NFL. And if I were in that situation, get healthy for another year. See what happens in 2022 or 2021. I think it's not a bad decision to make. It's pretty smart.
And to be honest, if they are gaming the system, if there's one or two of them that are gaming the system, more power to them, because the rest of the system is set against them.
And there's like a huge chunk of them that are on the New England Patriots, and they're just telling Belichick, like, look, man, it's in the books. We took advantage. What are you gonna do?
It's the most Belichick move of all time, really.
It is. So credit to that team.
So, I mean, it's not like, yeah. But yeah, at the same time, it's Bill Belichick. When you go explain that to him, like, he's not going to hear it. He's not going to listen.
Yeah.
Like, he can't do anything now, but I fully expect those 6 guys to either, like, lose their jobs next year or be demoted or something. He will find a way to mess with them.
He'll have them whacked.
Yeah. It would not be a surprise.
Right now. Yeah, because I just don't. I mean, yeah. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Bill Belichick does seem to be sort of changing in his older age, as people tend to do. He seems to be getting slightly more sentimental, slightly more human.
Yes,
we'll see.
But we are here to.
Today, man.
We're here to kick off the NFL season. Seahawks play in 11 days. The NFL season starts in, I think it's 7 days from now. It's September 10th. So that's a week from when we're recording this. And
it's a Thursday night
live.
thing.
It's Thursday night. It's the Kansas City Chiefs hosting the Houston Texans. I don't know if they're going to be fans in that game. Does anyone know off the top of their head if they're going to be fans in Kansas City?
I believe Kansas City is one of the places that doesn't allow. Let's check.
Seahawk fans are not going to be able to see Seahawk games in person until at least November 1st. So we're talking a full 2 more months before Seahawk fans can see their team in person.
Kansas City is allowing 17,000 fans.
I mean, that's
about a third.
That's a pretty small portion. I guess it's about a third of
I
what.
don't think they're allowing it. I'm going to guess it's a fourth for their stadium.
Yeah. For Arrowhead, I mean, Arrowhead is a giant outdoor stadium, so...
Right, their capacity is 76, so it's even less than that.
So it's like a fifth.
It's slightly more, yeah, it's down there, yeah. So that's interesting.
It's like a basketball game.
Yeah.
It's like a Chargers game. 17 divided by 76. It's 22.4%.
Yeah, that's it's interesting how that is going to happen, and I think if I were a Kansas City fan, not being able to watch the team in person coming off a Super Bowl win, that would be pretty tough. I don't know if that were
Would you
happening
go?
in Seattle. I still think I wouldn't go. Personally, I don't think I would.
With all the information you have today, would you go? No.
I will say the reason why I don't go is because
Like
I don't trust every single person that's going to be at the stadium, whether it's 1/5 of the capacity or the people that I would have to interact with to go through the process of getting to the stadium, going through the turnstile, going through security, getting to my seat. I feel that the risk is not worth it. Yeah, maybe my odds of getting it are pretty low. I'd wear a mask. I'd do all the things that I would do to keep myself protected. But I think
right.
I think it's just what happens. Let's say worst case scenario, I actually did contract it. Who could I then potentially bring it to and not know? That's the way that I would look at it.
That's fair.
Fair.
You know,
So I recently changed. Like in May, June, July, I agreed with you, and then not like I have like corona fatigue or something. I just seeing the newest data and seeing the newest patterns from Asia and Europe and the US. I now personally still understand why people wouldn't go, but looking at how the numbers break down and everything and how you get it, and who you get it, and who you get it to, and how dangerous it is now, I'd probably go, to be honest.
yeah, and
but
I
again,
think
that doesn't mean I consider anything up to now overreaction. I don't want to be taken out of context. You know, it's an ongoing thing. It's a brand new disease. But now we have 9 months of data, and now I know that the chances of it being really, really bad if I have it are extremely low.
Yeah.
And it's not at this point where I'm not. Again, I'm still taking all the precautions. I'm in Tokyo. We do that anyway. I wear masks everywhere. I socially distance everywhere. We don't touch anybody anyway here. We don't hug. We bow, motherfucker.
I miss hugging.
I got a haircut. I want to say almost 2 weeks ago. It's the first time someone outside of my household touched me. It's pretty weird.
Did you get strange feelings?
No, not at all. Not that kind of weird.
If you guys got it, would you take the Kirk Cousins approach, or would you fight it?
Oh man, the Kirk Cousins approach is all kinds of interesting. That is a great litmus test of what you would think.
The Ivan Drago approach.
Yeah, if he dies, he dies.
If he dies, he dies.
I mean, on one hand, you have that. That's kind of what you said at the end, but at the beginning you said is like, I don't think it's so bad, but I'm going to respect and keep everyone else healthy. I'm going to wear a mask. But if I get it, I die.
I don't think he means like he wouldn't seek treatment. He's not like a do not resuscitate.
Right? He's not.
That's what I was trying to figure out, because he literally said he's gonna let nature do its course.
Yeah.
I don't think he means it that. I don't think he's like a Christian Scientist.
Because I've thought about that. Like if I got it and it's like getting on a respirator and all that, I don't know. Maybe I'll just drive up into a mountain and just.
Like respirators are uncomfortable, but they're not something. They're not like you've just completely I mean like there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Respirators aren't like they're putting you on. You're not in stage 4 cancer kind of thing. I mean like most people even who go as far as a respirator, well at least in Japan, I don't know in America, but like you come back from it, right? They do ecto and you're back.
In America, the respirator rate was pretty terrible.
Pretty much a death sentence here.
Yeah.
Here, it's like once you're on respirator, you still got like a 75% chance of living.
Yeah, I think the U.S. respirator, like once they put you on a respirator, your odds of surviving were like under 25%. And that could be wrong, but it was pretty low.
Yeah, actually, I do remember that. I remember reading at some point it was 22%. But treatments are getting better every month as well, even over there.
True.
Even where you guys have just completely screwed the pooch. So
yeah.
Yes. Well, but this is the Hawkscast podcast. This is not the Corona What's Going to Happen to All of Us podcast. So we're gonna turn this into a smile and turn that frown upside down. The NFL season kicks off next week with the reigning Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs holding Houston Texans to start the 2020 NFL season. One that's becoming more and more unlike any other. There's so many different examples of how this year is going to be unlike any other NFL year we've ever had. it's going to be filled with unknowns, and we hope to uncover a few of them on the show today. This is the Hawkscast podcast, brought to you by the Hawkscast Forum. I am Sam, and with me as always is Zeb and Ross. And gentlemen, it's wonderful to be back talking about football, talking about the Seahawks. And I want to know, before we get into the topics, we talked a little bit about on the last podcast about how the NFL as kind of a whole have made kind of this change to information that's being released to the media. They still have a training camp, but they are not allowing reporters to report a lot of common things that you would hear normally, because we'd have a preseason, but we don't have a preseason. Has that impacted, like, are you guys still reading up on the Seahawks and trying to collect news and watching videos and reading articles, or have you seen that kind of drop off a little?
I mean, I still have my people that I talk to, the people that I get information from, but not having the preseason games has definitely thrown me off. It doesn't feel like football season's right around the corner to me.
Ross, what about you?
I don't really trust most of the information you can get. So I really haven't been. I mean, I'm still reading it to a degree when it comes. The good examples right now. I'm trying to do, as a lot of us, we're getting ready for fantasy football next week, right? And so you want to know information for that as well, and it's a lot harder this year. It's a lot more difficult. So I'm coming across stuff, but the grains of salt I'm taking everything with are a lot bigger this year, because with the lack of information, that's one thing. Plus, it's that much easier if you want to get 007 and kind of spread disinformation, because it seems like the way some people are reporting, like, literally seems like the football teams are telling reporters, you can say this and you can't say this, and you can say this and you can say that, and you're not allowed to talk about like rotation or depth charts. So you could actually you could walk over to Greg Bell, if you're the Seahawks, and say, yeah, you can talk about how John Ursua caught 3 catches today and he had an awesome touchdown. Don't talk about the fact that everybody else had 5 catches. Talk about the fact that John Ursua had 3, and now it sounds like he's going to make the team. Other people are not going to be available, and so you're hoping, to get an advantage with information that way. So we're open to manipulation. There's very little hard data available, and it's going to make everything hard. The waiver wire for the first 2 weeks of fantasy football are going to be insane, even more than normal.
Yeah. I think the one thing that has been the most disappointing, other than the fact that there's been no preseason, I didn't really know that I would miss it as much, is the fact that they announced those scrimmages and then went totally ghosted on the entire Seahawks world. They're like, nope, you guys don't get to watch this.
I gotta admit, the second, it was the first or the second, I don't know, one of them, the first one that came up that I was gonna be able to watch, I guess must have been the first one. I was super, super up for it. There wasn't gonna be preseason games. Everything else is so limited, but I kind of really hung my hat on, well, at least I'm gonna get to watch that scrimmage. And then I was like, I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning for me, looking for links, looking for news, and everybody's there. It wasn't super clear that it wasn't going to be that, because they weren't saying, there were lots of announcements and places were still saying, check us for news, but nobody really wanted to say exactly directly oh, by the way, you can't watch it.
Yeah,
because it was a reversal. They clearly made it sound like you could watch that when they first announced it, right?
They totally did. They announced in light of preseason games, we're going to do 2 scrimmages on this Saturday on a Wednesday,
yep.
And then
it was totally either said directly or implied we could watch it.
Definitely was a sense.
So,
all right. Well,
it was frustrating. That was really frustrating. I agree.
Good thing I watched it in my mind's eye.
Yeah. And speaking of that, this leads us directly into topic number 1. And Zeb, you're going to be as knowledgeable as this, so this might be a quick topic. But topic number 1. Do you expect any surprises on the 53-man roster? Any practice squad hopefuls? Do you even know who 50% of this roster is this year?
I have no idea who's on the practice squad. Do I expect any surprises to the 53-man roster? Yes, but I don't know what they're going to be. I have it pretty likely that I think somebody who's getting paid too much is going to get cut, and it's going to be a waste of money for us, because we signed some people for maybe more than they're worth.
That sounds like Greg Olson.
Well, he could be one of them. Then there's a couple of O linemen that we gave pretty good money to. That who, again, we haven't been able to see anybody or see anything, so it's hard to say. But I would be surprised if we didn't get surprised by a cut or two.
Ross, what about you? I mean, this is a pretty big question for a lot of unknowns. And the Seahawks, they just signed Paul Richardson. They brought him back after 2 years when he was in the currently named Washington football team. They're talking to Justin Britt, apparently BJ Finney, the guy they were going to have at center, and Ethan Posick. Maybe they're not panning out so well. Any surprises?
I mean, there are 10 wide receivers. See, they only have an 80 person roster right now, and it's like I think they've already gone to 75. I've heard somebody say. So there won't be as many cuts as in general, but there's a couple positions I expect it's hard to call, and injuries are going to play a role, and likely to be surprised. I think that the wide receiver is going to shock a couple people or surprise a couple people. I'm not even going to make the prediction of who makes it, but there's now more than 6 people that you're hearing. I mean, there's max 6 they're going to keep. It could be as few as 5, right? Because it looks like they're looking at keeping some extra tight ends. So you keep hearing good things about Swain, the rookie, but Paul Richardson was brought back for a reason. David Moore's got some experience, but at the same time, you see them bringing everybody else in, so you kind of wonder if they're not really comfortable with his growth. Metcalf and Lockett, of course, are the locks. We've got Lance Lanoy and I think Penny Hart. Philip Dorsett was brought in for a reason again. Then you got Seth Dawkins and Aaron Fuller. So that's a lot of people, and almost all those people you've heard positive out of training camp. Maybe not David Moore, but I think in the wide receiver area, we're going to look at some surprise cuts. Maybe tight end. Again, tight end, they've got how many tight ends? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tight ends on the roster right now. You think they keep 3, but maybe 4.
Yikes!
But so there's some names that are going to be released. Steven Sullivan, at the beginning of training camp, you thought was just not going to make it, but they said so many great things about him. Luke Wilson's just a survivor, man. Greg Olsen, obviously the big signing, the big money thing. But here's the thing. If you think all these young guys are going to develop, Greg, I don't know. Jacob Hollister was our guy last year. Will Disley, every time he's healthy for 3 games, only scores touchdowns. So even linebacker, I don't know if KJ Wright is as safe as we think he is, because they drafted a guy and they've moved him to KJ's position, and linebacker is not a position you think it has to sit for you. That's a position like running back. You think you can plug him in, right?
Yeah.
So, and it would be kind of a waste to not play our top drafted dude. So, I don't know. And the other thing with linebackers, we're going to be manufacturing. We don't have a big, massive, sack artist. But so it's just all a bunch of interchangeable numbers, right? Look by the stats. A lot of 6 to 8 stat guys on the roster. So,
yeah.
You can't keep all of them, probably.
So you guys have kind of covered all of the surprise opportunities.
Sorry.
What about what about running back? What is your take on running back? Because the reason why I bring that up is the information that is coming out right now, very limitedly, is Chris Carson wants a contract. Chris Carson has talked to the media recently, and he's said, Seahawks haven't talked to me about a contract. He's in the last year of his deal. Him and Shaquille Griffin are both going to be entering the last year of their contracts. Chris Carson's got a ton of mileage. He's got a ton of reps. He's never finished a year healthy. And he's going to his 4th year. And I think running back is one of the hardest positions to pay for, because the return on it is so questionable.
The other thing is you've got Rashad Penny.
You have Rashad Penny, who's a first-round pick.
Yeah, and he'll be healthy by the second half of the year. So you kind of assume that Chris Carson goes away after this year.
Would you see them trade? Could you see them trade him during the season, since there's no preseason? trade him away to a team for something in return, whether it's a pick or
No,
a
because
play.
he's more valuable to us than what people would give up for a running back at this point. Probably. I mean, there's some running back needy teams out there, but
J. Adam
just
2001 chiming in on the chat saying I have conflicting thoughts about paying him big. I think that's the question, because let's say you keep him for the whole year, let him run out his contract, he signs with someone else, you then have Travis Homer and Rashad Penny as your running back core. I am really going to
Who
be
just
interested
got-
to see
Joe
what
Mixon.
happens. Joe Mixon just re-signed with the Bengals, right?
yeah, and he got $12 million a year.
Yeah.
Big money for a running back.
I think, and like Chris Carson's better than Joe Mixon, so I think Joe Mixon's contract kind of closes the door on Chris Carson coming back. Unfortunately,
Because would you pay a running back anywhere close to double-digit millions?
no. I mean, I don't undervalue the position as much as some of that. I do still think that certain running backs matter, but I also think that we've got Rashad Penny, and I want to get some return on that. If we spent a first-round pick on that, you got to get some return on investment on that. If you pay Chris Carson, you're just saying that you're never going to get anything out of that year's first-year pick, probably, and that's just not winning economics, right? I mean, I hate to be dry and a jerk about it. Plus, to be honest, Travis Homer seems to be okay,
Not to mention
And-
DJ Dallas.
and DJ Dallas.
That's a guy that's like, like you were saying, he's someone that's getting a lot of publicity from the media, local media, and you're saying like, why are we hearing more about him more so than anyone else? Is that because Seahawks are trying to plant news? Is that trying to like reduce Carson's leverage? We can't really tell because we really have nothing to gauge it off of. We can only gauge what we're being told, right?
Yeah, it's a crowded backfield. I mean, I guess there's going to be a surprise cut there because so Rashad Penny starts on PUP, right? So you can keep everybody at first. You can keep Hyde, Homer, Dallas, and Carson if you really want 4 running backs. But then when Penny comes back in 6 weeks, who do you get rid of? Travis Homer? Do you get rid of Carlos Hyde because he seems to be sort of the most redundant, but also kind of the most stable, very unflashy but very reliable? It looks like you'd have to get rid of Travis Homer. But
Yeah, unless Hyde pulls a Eddie Lacy, it seems like Homer's would end up being the odd man out.
True.
And
But
Eddie Lacy made it almost through the entire year, as bad as he was.
Yeah, he stunk.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that again. That was pretty traumatic. The other thing is, though, is Homer's also looked at more of a change of pace third down back because they don't have one of those anymore.
And a special teams monster.
No.
Yeah, so maybe it's Carlos Hyde that's just waiting on for 6 weeks to get cut.
Could be.
I wonder because, and we'll actually talk about this in the next topic, but the fact that teams have not been able to scout performance on other teams, it's going to be really hard to manufacture like that waiver wire and manage it, because once you make those cuts, unless there's a name or someone you scouted when they were a rookie or you scouted them from previous seasons, how many people are going to take a flyer out on a guy that they have not had any film on over the past 8 months, potentially, and maybe even more, because someone buried on the depth chart gets cut, but you liked them in college 3 years ago. Would you still want to take a flyer on someone like that popping up on the waivers? I don't know how teams are going to handle that.
It's going to be tough.
Yeah, it's gonna. Yeah, that's all you can say. It's gonna be really tough. It's gonna all come down to like projection and old evaluations and maybe like those kind of what is usually sort of a cursory player workout when you bring somebody in. Maybe those will go a little bit more in depth.
Yeah. Well, let's
Maybe.
push forward into topic number 2. And Ross, I want to ask you this question. We kind of covered it a little bit, but with no preseason, who does it favor going into week 1?
I mean, there's different angles you can take on that. I think, yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about this in the shower because I do all my best thinking in the shower. I thought the defense is kind of favored because they don't need to have as much timing. They don't have to have the intricacies sometimes. But at the same time, the defense has no film to scout with right now. You know, I think it kind of comes down to individual teams, and I think it's going to be less about offense, defense, and more about teams with continuity and coaching and motivation and even scouting. Like, how much do you value like football intelligence, not just like their athletic ability? Like, do your rookies are your rookies prepared because like they super study film and they super study the playbook and so they're comfortable with it? Are you a high tech team that uses a lot of VR since there's no contact? Do they just put them in a corner and put that helmet on them so they can still see what a football field looks like from their particular angle and not from the angle where the camera is on film? I think it's going to be things like that are going to really give teams advantage. So it's going to be solid coaching, teams with continuity, teams with smart players more than usual even. I mean, that always helps. It's an underrated part of the game, but even more so this year probably. And, you know, it's really going to be coaches who are organized, motivated, and with playbooks that are probably flexible, less complicated, but flexible. That's my kind of take on it. But I'm not sure.
Zeb, do you have anyone coming out ahead in week 1?
Well, here's what I think. I think that maybe this is wishful thinking, but I do think that the Seahawks, between Russell and our receivers, there's a lot of you know, they know each other really well. They've had a lot of time to play together, and I have a feeling that they're going to come out firing. And I think Atlanta took some hits on defense this offseason. I don't think they're going to be very good defensively, and I have a feeling the Seahawks might just have a step on them. And I expect to see – I kind of expect to see Russell getting to air it out a little bit earlier than we're used to. I mean, you just look at the statistics. Russell, as a deep ball thrower, is head and shoulders above everybody else. And for whatever reason – guys like Lockett and DK just seem to be able to be where they need to be when he throws one of those up. So I have a feeling that Atlanta's going to have a hard time keeping up with that vertical attack. Now, again, this could be wishful thinking because this literally never happened, and it's always what I want to happen. So we'll have to wait and see. But I could see our offense having an extra step on their defense this first week.
Do you think Russell Wilson's particular style of play is kind of beneficial in this kind of truncated offseason?
I do, and I think it goes perfectly with the fact that the one area on offense where we don't have continuity going into this season is on the offensive line, and Russell, you know, he may have slowed down a little bit over the years, but he's the kind of guy that we've seen can make things happen despite not having good offensive line play. So even if there is struggles on the O-line, I believe that he is going to be able to make things happen.
I think you both make really good points about, to some degree, you're making your best estimated guess. You know, you're trying to figure out, without being able to see what the team looks like, without knowing who the depth chart is, without being able to compare how they'd perform against other teams, we can only rely on the historical aspect of what the Seahawks are and what does that make the team look like. I think Pete's done a historically really good job of making teams compete. You know, there's definitely games where it looks like they forgot what they were doing for the first 35 minutes, and the last 25 they look unstoppable. That's annoying, you know, but that's kind of who the Seahawks are. But I'm not really sure if there is any favorite or anyone that can come out ahead in this, just because there are too many unknowns. Because as confident as the Seahawks are going to be going into this first game on the road in Atlanta to kick off their season, there's still so many unknowns that could potentially happen. We haven't seen any NFL team hit with a bug yet. We haven't. seen them impacted by coronavirus. I don't know if you guys knew this. I found this out by researching it for fantasy football. Teams have up to 90 minutes before their kickoff to designate a player to the IR and promote someone from the practice squad. So
Wow.
if you lose, let's say you lose like your backup safety, 90 minutes before the game, you can throw that person onto the IR. They go to IR for 3 weeks, and then you can call someone up from your practice squad to fill that roster spot, and they can suit up and play that same day in 90 minutes before the game. So the fact that we have to have that designated that quickly, I think it's good that they have that kind of like a policy in place, but if you're replacing someone 90 minutes before the game, and if they're a part of a position group, what is the likelihood that it's only one person that's potentially impacted? Let's just say they have a false positive. Everyone in that position group room maybe is impacted as well. So I don't know if there is going to be a favorite. I don't think teams can really come out ahead because no one knows what to expect. So I don't think there is anyone that's going to really favor, because preseason what helps level the playing field. It helps you understand like this is what we're going to do. And I just don't know if that's what we're going to see. I'm really unsure of what any team is going to look like come week one. And maybe Houston, Kansas City will kind of set the table to see what we can expect, and maybe it'll be okay. But I'm not confident.
So it was a trick question, then, is what you're saying.
I tricked you guys to tell and bare your souls, and then I flipped it on you. So,
yeah, I mean, you could be right.
And I think that's a really cynical way of looking at it. I'm not normally that kind of a person, but I just kind of feel like this particular season, it's not really set up for things to always go as planned. I don't know if there anything sports-wise specifically that has gone off without a hitch.
I mean, I understand all that. I just feel that, again, with the new information we have about the more realistic maybe image of it, if you are willing to spend the money, then I think that it really, really changes the thing. That changes the situation. That changes the outlook. If you're willing to test everybody every day, and if you've got the money to do that, then the odds that, for example, it's just one person who has it actually might be kind of realistic. It also depends, of course, on the position group. I mean, if you got exposed a couple of days ago because of your, something, and you've just come down with a bit of practice, it depends on how you do. I mean, like, it tends not to spread well outside. Depends on how big your room was when you had your team meetings and your position group meetings. I mean, again, until last month, I was 100% on board with that. I was just like, there's just going to be these clusters. You're going to see these clusters. But again, you're kind of already seeing, I mean, baseball's like, sort of a social distancing sport anyway, but they do have like their clubs and they have their dugouts and they have their meetings and whatever. And MLB hasn't fallen apart to the degree that I kind of expected, especially the first couple of days. Had already saw stuff and I was like, okay, it's just going to fall apart. But
yeah,
again,
it's amazing how they went from that to what we're seeing now, for sure. Because what was happening in MLB that first week and a half was literally like worst case scenario across 10 teams.
Yeah, but again, if you have, I mean, and that's the situation. Like, you can't apply it across all of society. It doesn't mean everything else should just be opened up. Now, no, it's a unique case. The NFL is a billion whatever dollars a year industry, and they want to protect it, so they're spending huge money to do it. If you're willing to spend huge money right now, you can protect certain things. That's why, for example, I was arguing with a little bit of you guys off of the air about things like college sports. College sports as well brings in huge money. If you don't let it play, it's not just the young people's lives that are going to be influenced, it's those universities' actual income themselves. If college football doesn't play this year, and it doesn't look like it's going to, there's a lot of like music students whose dreams just died. That sounds stupid, but it's actually true, because football teams at major universities, the money comes in and it's spread across the university wide. You've just killed off not just football, like people like to say, but you've just killed off Next year, there's not going to be money for certain people's scholarships, and that's going to be music. That's going to be art. That's going to be literature. It's not just the athletes, and you're going, well, it's still too bad. No, you're affecting a university's income. And so it might be it might behoove you to spend $50 million to keep your $150 million investment. And again, you can kind of drop the charade that college sports, for example, are really, really part of the university. You don't have to have those normal kids in their normal classes. You can still have if you're going to have a society organized as the U.S. is, where we have like this college football thing that's a giant industry that provides money for everybody, even though they're not considered professional. You just got to drop the pretense of anything else. Let them perhaps play, because we know it's not that big a risk anymore. We know that their chance. College football players don't have diabetes. They don't have other things going on with them. So for them, and again, they'd have to make some conditions and some sacrifices as well. But if they want to make them, they can. I don't know. It's a lot to give up for a lot of people, and it's not probably quite as dangerous as we thought in May, April, June. Just my thought.
I think there is some merit to that. I think there is some merit to saying, like, hey, for a certain demographic, especially for athletes, student athletes, quote unquote, their risk is very different from someone who is, obviously immune compromised or elderly or, has other underlying health issues. I think that's true, but I think the problem or the issue comes back to is, like, what liability is anyone willing to take on that? Because, like you're saying,
why I think it's down. I think
because what you're saying is, it makes sense to a degree, but the thing is, we don't know what is the fallout afterwards. Like, what's it look like 6 months after? What's it look like 12 months after? Like, is this one strain we're dealing with, or is it multiple strains and everyone's just calling it the same thing? And I think that's why I'm in the bucket of, like, the risk to me, it's probably not as bad as it is for other people, but it's just not worth the risk. Like, it's a sacrifice, and my quality of life is going to be diminished because I can't do the things I want to do. But in the grand scheme of things,
well, I mean, there's kids that aren't going to college next year because of this, right? There's athletes who earn a scholarship. I mean, it's not worth it?
It's not worth it. But that brings up a whole separate issue, like you said. Like, and I feel like we're probably getting off topic. But that's
as far as the NFL goes, though. I don't think there's going to be a lot of those 90. I feel like there will be some. It won't be zero, but I don't think you're going to see as many 90-minute substitutions as we expected early on.
Yeah, I think with the NFL and the money they're putting into it, I hope and I assume that they're being as risk averse as possible because they have the money to do that. And if they make it work, credit to them.
I think another interesting thing, I think we touched on it last time, was that cutting that cornerback who snuck the player in, that was like such a brilliant move. I mean, that guy's an idiot. Sorry, guy. And I know you've apologized since, and I hope someday you do get a chance somewhere, but because you're a young guy, But that I think sort of somewhat set a tone for the whole NFL. Like, this isn't playing around. If you're going to risk everybody and everything, then you're just going to be out of a job. You just lost your career. You're going to go do a normal job.
To a degree, that was the perfect scapegoat for the NFL and for the Seahawks, because it was an undrafted guy that was brought in who maybe had little to no shot at an NFL career. Maybe they were going to be a practice squad guy. If it were someone else, like a first-round draft pick or anyone else high profile that wasn't maybe getting good advice and did this, I wonder if a team, Seahawks or anyone else, would have done the same thing. It's like, probably not. My star player got a DUI. Oh, you get a fine, you get suspended, but we're still going to keep you for the length of however we can value you. Oh, my sixth string, long snapper got in trouble. You're easy to cut. So I think that was the perfect scenario for them to make an example out of someone. I don't know if they would do the same thing if it were a higher profile player.
If Russ snuck Ciara into the dorm.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean, maybe it's not so silly like a booty call, but maybe there's a family emergency and
it could be as silly as a booty call.
yeah, you know. All right, well, we're off topic.
Yeah.
Let's jump back into it. We're gonna move on to topic number 3. Zeb, who is the NFC West favorite in your mind? This is our Hawkscast corner. We're gonna focus on the NFC West this year for this topic all season long. Who is your favorite in the NFC West?
Well, my favorite is the Seahawks, but I think that the NFC West favorite right now has to still be the San Francisco 49ers. Without getting to see any of the moves that have been made in action and get a better scope on how these teams are looking going into this season, they were the best last season. We played them well, and we I don't think we're that far behind, but being that they would win as far as they did, and it doesn't look like they got worse. In my opinion, they have to be the favorite. I think the Cardinals, maybe you make a case that they're playing for second place this season, or that maybe they surprise us, but I think the Rams are pretty much old news at this point. I think it's going to very likely come down to us or the Niners, and without seeing these new rosters in action, I have to give them the edge at this point.
I think that's fair.
Right, isn't it?
Real
Yeah,
quick, I want to ask you this. Of the 4 quarterbacks in the NFC West right now, which quarterback is most likely not to play for their team in the future? Like, who's the first one that's going to get cut, traded, or not play for their team?
I mean, without looking at contracts and all that stuff, I think Jimmy G might be the guy who would most likely. I don't know that he's. I think he's good enough to keep them. They had to build a pretty good roster around him for it to work. I think if they could find an upgrade, they would do it. I think Goff's in a similar boat, but I don't know which one of those contracts would be easier to get out of. I know Russell's not going anywhere, and I don't think Kyler Murray's going anywhere. So it would definitely come down to those two.
Ross, what about you? Who's your NFC West favorite, and which quarterback in the NFC West is going to leave first?
I mostly agree with Zeb as far as it's the 49ers. We got nothing to say otherwise right now, so let's give them their due. I don't think they're like prohibitive. I mean, we were like a yard and a half away from taking it last year, right?
Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
So it's close. I think they have more talent. I think we have better coaching, so it's close.
And we have Russell.
Yeah, we have Russell. That matters huge, of course. And we have DK Metcalf, and like his second, like that could be a big difference. Him in his second year could be all over the place, right?
Do we know what the health looks like on Mr. Debo down there?
He may miss his first game, maybe miss his first 2 games.
Okay, because he's a monster as well.
They also lost Jalen Hurd, wide receiver. I think they drafted in the 3rd round, I want to say. And they don't have Emmanuel Sanders anymore either.
Yeah. They're that Mr. Hurd is always hurt. That's 2 years in a row he's not hard, right?
And they locked in George Kittle to a big contract.
Huge contract. And it kind of makes sense in retrospect. They're going to be their guy, isn't it? He and Debo.
So here's a question for the NFC, because I think we're all of the mindset that San Francisco, based upon their roster and how they finished last year as the NFC champion, deservedly so. If there's one thing that's going to knock them off of the top spot, what is it going to be? I would say the thing that knocks off the Niners is quarterback play, because they're definitely dependent on the run. They're dependent on a strong pass rush and a strong defense. But if their quarterback play drops, if Jimmy G doesn't continue to excel and they can't trust him to win a game, he can, nurse the lead. He can play within the offense. But if he's someone that has to go out and win a game, hey, 4th quarter, 3 minutes left, limited time, limited timeouts, can he push the team down the field and will them to win? I would say that is their biggest opportunity. If Jimmy G falters, they turn into the Rams.
I mean, that's true for a lot of teams, but the difference is that with Garoppolo, he looks the part, and sometimes he plays the part, but not always. He doesn't seem to come up big when you want him to really come up big, right? So I think I 100% agree with that. If there's the weak link in the armor seems to be that you can't. Their starting quarterback hasn't completely established himself as like a star yet, and you want to have the star there. I think another issue is they're heavily dependent on the run, but I don't know that they've got the right running backs. They've got a few kind of injury prone. I mean, I don't always believe in injury prone, but it seems to be true in this case. They got some injury prone guys that they seem to be relying on a guy to be their workhorse who's never been a workhorse before, except for very short periods of time. Like, I'm wondering if they've filled the running back position group well, and as Zed was just talking about, or somebody was just talking about, their wide receiver core to start the season, especially, is going to be really thin, and that could be costly.
They got a lot of guys, though. They brought in some, like Tavon Austin and Travis Benjamin.
Yeah, but they
Kendrick
brought in a Bourne. I mean, but Travis Benjamin doesn't. He's a good, wide receiver 4 and an okay wide receiver 3, but he doesn't scare you.
No, for sure. But they've got bodies, so I don't know if they're as thin as.
What I mean is that if you want to run the ball a lot in the NFL now, it means you actually have to have like a lot of threats on the outside, and I don't know if Travis Benjamin lining up outside week 1 is enough to convince, the Seahawks that their strong safety has to leave the box. And so it comes out, do you have the guys on the outside that are going to open things up inside? Do you have enough pressure outside to take a guy or two out of the box? And I don't know if they'd have that, especially early. Debo's not going to play. Or if he's going to play hurt.
Zeb, if you were to look at one thing in the NFC West that maybe flips it on its head, what would have to happen? Whether that's the Niners falling or another team rising?
I mean, besides a major injury to an important player somewhere, I guess there's still a lot of potential down there in Arizona. So they could come out hot. You never know. That Murray to Hopkins connection could be a big thing. So
yeah, I mean, if Murray develops, if he takes a jump, and if he has chemistry with Hopkins, that could be. They could suddenly be favorites. You would think, actually.
Yeah, because Hopkins to me is probably top 3 in the league, top 5 at worst.
Yeah. 100% agree.
And Murray, we'll see. I mean, he's just a little guy, but he might. I expect him to improve. So
Murray should give 10% of his signing bonus to Russell Wilson.
Maybe
if 15. There was no Russell Wilson, he doesn't get drafted, right?
For sure.
That's true. But then in that case, Russell also owes Drew Brees.
Kind of, but it's a little different style of play.
It's different, but that was the only. 5%,
not 10%.
That was the only guy that was like, okay, this might work because look at Drew Brees.
Well, maybe they were like, remember Doug Flutie? What if this is like the black Doug Flutie?
What was he, like 5'6"?
Doug Flutie was tiny. He was 5'9".
5'9". But
he was 5'6".
Dude, have I told you the story of Doug Flutie saving my fantasy football team one year? So he was playing for the Pats or the Bills. I can't remember which team, but it was a meaningless game. I had the defense he was playing. I want to say Indianapolis Colts. I know. I had the Colts defense for some reason. It was a Monday night game. I was down, like, within the last minute of the game, I was down, I want to say 2.5 points. For some reason, Flutie is trying to drive the ball in a game that they're losing. He gets sack fumbled, and the other team and the defense recovers the ball. On the last play of the game, I got 3 points from my defense and I won. So I want to shout out to Doug Flutie because whatever he was doing, it was the wrong reason, but my fantasy team won that game. So thank you, Doug. Nice. Birdfinger chiming in on the chat says until Hopkins meets Jamal Adams. I mean, I think that's the one thing that's really hard for me to get excited about the Jamal Adams trade is I haven't seen him play. You know, I didn't watch Jets football last year. I didn't think about him as a player that like was on anyone's radar. You know, and it's you know he basically has been sitting for a while, but we haven't seen him play. With at least with Jadeveon, he started like week 1. We got to see him like right away.
It's true.
But yeah, let's move on to the last topic of the evening. Ross, I want to know, what are your predictions going into 2020? Give me 2 predictions that you've got in your back pocket.
Two predictions. Okay, so one is that even though we just contradicted this, I think something's happened, and I think NFC West goes Seattle, Arizona, San Francisco, and that other team, LA. And I really do think that's going to be. And I think this year, unusually, we're going to get an offensive player of the year that's not a quarterback.
Interesting. So most likely a running back or a wide receiver that just has like Calvin Johnson year with like 2,000 yards.
And I think it's going to be slightly attributable to like the weird off season. I think, for example, certain aspects of the game, and I'm going to keep a secret until we go into next week. I think certain aspects of the game are going to be more important this year.
Nice. What if a right guard was just so badass this year that they gave him Offensive Player of the Year?
like maybe not right guard, but you can see like a left tackle or a right tackle doing that, right?
It's like have you guys seen the movie The Blind Side about Michael Oher? Where he blocks the kid like from the 50-yard line all the way into the end zone. And a player just does that every single game.
If some dude just came out of nowhere and was just like pancaking, 20-yard block, 50-yard block, and it was behind a really, really good rusher, and the media sort of got on to like grab that angle. Remember, like for a couple of years, like for like 15 years, Max Strong didn't exist. Then his last couple of years, he was like a media darling, and it was really emphasized to the point like Madden, like put him as sort of like, you know, blocking, fullback blocking became part of the game for a year, right?
Yeah.
You could see where like if the media latched on to like some amazing runner for 2,000 yards, and it was all due to the right or left tackle in a way, and he also excelled in pass protection. You could see, the road there. It's a very small road, but you could see the road to that.
Yeah. Zeb,
I'd be all with that.
What's your predictions for 2020?
I'm going straight Seahawks predictions here, and I'm going strictly offense. I think Russell Wilson is going to have more yards passing and more passing touchdowns in a single season than he's ever had. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ross, I believe this would be the first time the Seahawks have 2,000-yard receivers.
There would be. It would be. They were close a couple times, but this would be the first time.
Birdfinger chiming in on the chat saying Russ gets his first MVP vote. Russ was voted as the number 2 NFL top 100 player, according to the players this season.
Yeah.
So credit to the players for voting for Russ.
Never got an MVP vote though.
Didn't get an MVP vote, which is weird. But Bobby Wagner has. Tony Dungy has voted for Bobby Wagner as MVP. So shout out to Tony Dungy.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Russell was second just behind Breno Giacomini, giving credence to the idea that a tackle could win Player of the Year.
My predictions, I'm gonna follow Zeb's lead. I'm gonna go Seahawks focused. I'm gonna say that Pete Carroll wins a Coach of the Year. I feel like there's something about this weird season. Pete, because he's so different and he's so unique in how he runs his team. I just think, especially with what's going on outside of football, I think that this is a year that Pete really shines and captures a lot of attention. And I think he gets acknowledged with Coach of the Year, not just for what he does on the field, but what I think he is going to push and try and achieve outside of football. So that's my first prediction. My second prediction is that Michael Dixon returns to his All-Pro and Pro Bowl form, and we have a punting game we're celebrating again.
I like it.
You guys took all the good ones, so I had to pull a Michael Dixon move and just try and see what I could go with.
It's good to give Michael Dixon a mention because we forget how special that guy can be.
Birdfinger chimes in with the second prediction. He says a defensive player will get double-digit sacks. Here's a question: what is more likely to happen? Someone like Jamal Adams getting double-digit sacks, or someone like L.J. Collier or Jamal Taylor getting double-digit sacks?
Is Jamal Taylor going to start the season on the roster?
I mean, he's a third-round draft pick, right?
No, but I mean, I think he's not practicing right now.
Is he not practicing? Okay.
He may.
We're talking about Darryl Taylor?
Oh, I'm sorry, Darryl Taylor.
Sorry.
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah.
He's not practicing right now, right?
All right. Well, I gave you L.J. Collier, so you got choices.
Yeah. Jeez. I thought you were going to go somebody a little different. I don't think you can get 10 sacks from the safety position.
Let's make it easier. Based upon the depth behind them, a strong safety getting 5 sacks, or a rotational defensive end who we haven't seen get to those numbers, like a L.J. Collier or Rasheem Green, get 5 sacks.
I think in our defense, it's more likely to be one of those ends. I mean, we know that Adams is capable of it, but do you see him being used that way in Norton's defense?
I do, actually. Because of how much they gave up from, I do. But
okay, good. I mean, I hope so. I hope you're right.
It depends on the person. I don't know. Like, if you told me, like, who's more likely to get 5 sacks this year, specifically Collier or Adams, I'd probably say Adams, but I want it to be Collier. I want Collier to make this unexpected giant jump this year, like we all do. But please don't let that be a bust.
Hearing good things about that Robinson kid, so who knows?
Yeah. Although names like Alden for defensive ends make me worry. Anyway.
Yeah. And those are our 4 topics. Even though they were predictions for 2020, we do always have our Hawkscast predictions. So these are just simple over, under, yes, no, maybe if and or. But Ross, yes or no, will the Seahawks host actual fans in the stadium in 2020?
Yes.
Zeb.
November, December.
No.
I'm gonna follow Zeb. I don't think it's likely that Seattle will host fans in a stadium this year.
I mean, I think it really comes down to if we see numbers go up when it gets cold. You know, if we don't, then sure. But if we do, which I think we probably will.
Ross, yes or no? Will Jamal Adams be everything we didn't know we'd need?
Yes.
Zeb?
Yes. Yep.
I'm going to say no, because I don't know what we don't need. Because I don't feel as if... I'm excited for Jamal Adams. I think he's a really dynamic player. But I just don't see how he fits as a strong safety. How that makes the team better yet.
I mean, he can do anything Bradley McDougall does, except better, but also more dynamic, and he brings us extra things to it. Right? He can do anything.
Yeah. I mean, like the biggest thing that people are talking about with Jamal Adams is the fact that, one, he can pass a rush, and he's really strong tackler, a la Cam Chancellor. And while those are all positives, I just don't know if that's what the defense was missing. Like, yeah, we were missing pass rush, but we were not. It wasn't from the secondary that we needed the pass rush. So I guess that's
right. But the thing is, as soon as he moves up in the box, and he's in the box to defend the run, but the offense who has a pass play called, now they have to account for him, right? It's not just like what he does or what he will do every play. It's the fact that the offense now has to account for him every play.
So what you're really saying is our base defense, our second or third linebacker, is going to be playing coverage while Jamal Adams is rushing the quarterback.
It could be, because again, I don't think Pete Carroll gets, like we talked about this last year. I don't think Pete Carroll gets so hung up on what you label a player.
No,
like a position is not the thing; it's just a title, right?
What do you do with your position?
What really matters is how fast and what you could do. So,
yeah.
Plus, if you look, I was just reading about this earlier. In recent seasons, pressure on the quarterback has increasingly been due to good coverage in the defensive backfield more than just having good defensive line pressure. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
teams are really they're really starting to stock their DBs and making sure that they're doing well back there, and that's causing more pressure on the quarterback. So I think even if we don't see sacks from Jamal Adams, I think having him there and improving the secondary the way it seems that we have should improve our pass rush.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Yes or no, will one of our running backs finish the year on IR? Ross.
Yes, of course. Maybe 2.
Zeb?
I mean, yeah, in all probability.
Look, man, I just want Marchand to come back and score more touchdowns. I don't care how he does it. If that means some running backs have to go on IR, it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Yep, I'm with it.
And the last prediction for the evening, Ross, yes or no, will players kneel during the anthem and will TV networks show it? There's a long pause. Ross.
Yes. I guess and I guess.
Okay.
Will players kneel during the anthem? Yes, because they should. Will TV networks show it? Yes, because they can't help themselves.
I think it's the perfect scenario where it's going to be a yes, and it's going to really blow up politically. People are going to talk about it on all kinds of sides, which is kind of the point. So for regardless of where you are on that topic, it's bringing awareness, which is what the players want, and it's forcing people to talk about it. So credit to them. But yeah, I think that is going to happen. It's people won't be able to turn away from it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you guys are over there right now. Like, that's happening in a lot of sports right now. Is it still like a thing? Do people talk about it? Do people?
It's evolved away from
Like-
sports because it's happening in bad ways, I guess you would say. I mean, I don't know how to characterize it, but the reason why people are kneeling, especially black athletes and the people that support the black athletes, why they're kneeling, those issues are becoming still more prevalent. They're still more they're talked about a lot more, and they're gathering more attention. So in a sense, it's not about the players and what they're standing up for, but what's actually happening in the world, in the US.
I'm just wondering, like, how. I mean, like, I don't. Things are really complicated over there right now. So
We got all
Yeah.
kinds of things going on.
You could say that.
I think the one thing is, and we'll close this because it is a little bit off topic, I think there are more people that have been willing to accept that kneeling for the anthem is not a remark against the United States, but for the original meaning of what Colin Kaepernick meant when he said, I am standing up for the way that people of his ethnicity and heritage are being treated by this one group. And I think more and more people are willing to accept that that's why people are doing it, and not interpreting it as a comment against what the flag represents to them.
can we just real quick acknowledge that military guy who I forget his name?
Nate Boyer?
voice? That
Former
guy.
long snapper in training camp for
Yeah.
the Seahawks.
Went down, talked to him about it, and told him, hey, don't just sit, kneel. Don't just sit on the bench. Kneel. Without that dude, this is a completely different conversation. Like I always like think you Colin Kaepernick thinking like and whatnot, or putting it all on him. But like that guy, without that guy, this isn't a conversation, right?
I think if Kaepernick
Completely
didn't transition to kneeling, it would take a lot longer for someone to notice, for sure.
It's not just that. It's a complete. Once you go into like a prayer mode, it gets a little bit harder to be attacked. It looks a little different. It's a very, very different optic.
He
And
stopped
it's-
nobody though.
Yeah, true that.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, but the thing is, particularly now, like Sammy's saying, it's a lot more acceptable right now, and like a lot of people are willing to like admit that meaning. Would they admit that meaning if all those people were just sitting on the bench or like reading a newspaper or going over their playbook? It had to be kneeling,
Right.
right?
I think
the
it seems
transition
like-
has been weird.
It seems to me like kneeling during the anthem should at this point be like, well, okay, at least he's not trapping police inside of a station and trying to light it on fire. So
Right. Exactly.
That took a turn, but yeah. I mean, I think that's where people kind of thought it was going to go to. So yeah, it will be interesting to see what that looks like, because the first game is coming up. It's obviously a nationally televised game. It's the first NFL thing that people will be able to see. I expect it to be a huge spectacle for the networks, for the league, for fans. And I imagine with Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes being two black starting quarterbacks, it's an opportunity for them to carry on a message that they had in the offseason. So we'll see what happens. But I'm excited for it.
Yeah, me too. It's football.
It's football. And gentlemen, that's our podcast. Time for shout-outs. Zeb, Ross, any shout-outs for today?
Yeah, I got...
go ahead, Zeb.
Shout out to Jonathan Majors, Jimmy Fales, and Joe Talbot. Check out The Last Black Man in San Francisco if you haven't seen it yet.
Is that a movie?
It is.
Huh, okay. Shout out to everybody who's just doing the best they can this year. It's a challenge. Get through it. You're doing awesome. If you need help, talk to somebody.
True.
Definitely. Good advice. Shout out to Birdfinger, to Jay Adam, to Boy Scout for chiming in on the chat on Twitch today. We are the Hawkscast Podcast, brought to you by the Hawkscast Forum. Check us out on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast, Seahawks Forum. We have updated our website. It's a little bit different. It's still Hawkscast Forum, or hawkscast.com, forum.hawkscast.com. I am Sam. With me, as always, is Zeb and Ross, and we wish you a Go Hawks.
Seahawks!
Hawks.